Hello. Besides being quick and easy to construct and quick and easy to deploy into cordage, my 1 minute to construct paracord bracelet has a bunch of advantages over sort of the traditional woven designs. In this video, we're going to talk about them and some extra tips and tricks. The size of this bracelet on your wrist, the looseness, is dictated by its length, of course, and that's dictated by the end of the hole to the end of the stopper knot. Notice these two bracelets appear to be the same size. They are. However, these are adjustable. If you pull this out and you compress the coils to make your hole big enough to use, notice how much longer this bracelet now is. And you may think, well, if you extend it on this side, you're merely eating up the same length over here. No, you're not. As you extend this out 1 inch, you're decreasing this by only ½ an inch because it has two sides to it. So this is now a longer bracelet, looser on the wrist. And what if you want to go the other way? What if you want it tighter? Now you pull it in the opposite direction. You expand the coils downward to make up for the fact that you've increased the tail size. And now it's a shorter bracelet. So these are actually adjustable in terms of how they fit, how loose they are on your wrist, based on how you move the knot in or out. You also can, of course, retie the knot at different locations. That's another way to adjust the size. When you want to neaten your bracelet, either because you have parts that are bashed together like this, or you have gaps in it, sort of like that, there are different ways to do it. One is to roll it against a flat surface. You can also just roll it against your other hand if you're out in nature and don't have any flat surface. And another way to kind of evenly distribute the coil is to corkscrew it around your finger like this. That tends to make a nice even exterior. Roughly speaking, you're going to need about a foot of paracord for each inch of prepared bracelet you make. You may have to sort of do trial and error making the bracelet a few times, but from the tip of the hole to the bottom of the stopper knot, that length in inches is how many feet of paracord you'll need. You, of course, don't want frayed paracord. You want to prepare the ends. So, for instance, I'm going to take my razor knife, my Mac 2 razor knife, cut a clean, fresh end. And now there are different philosophies about how to do this part. What I do is I hold it close to the flame, but not in the flame, because I'm trying to get it hot and bubbly from the heat, but I'm not trying to singe it. Now, normally when I make paracord products, I get it nice and hot and then I bash it against the metal of the lighter. And what that does is it gives me a nice crowned flat head. And that almost acts like a stopper knot to keep this from submarining down into the product. But you don't want that with my bracelet design because you have to, for instance, undo that Ashley stopper knot, and this is going to snag you. So you don't want this. It'll cause snags in deployment and snags when you're undoing the Ashley stopper knot. So instead, we're going to not do that last step of splaying it, crowning it, and instead we're going to taper it. And we do that by squishing the end with our fingers. You can either spit on your fingers or have a bowl of water right here, and that'll let me touch the melted plastic and not burn my fingers. So we get the plastic good and melted. I believe it's nylon, actually. And when it's good and hot, good and bubbly, I then wet my fingers and I taper it. And now we have a nice sealed end. However, we don't have that splayed top. And this is going to be better for my bracelet design. With a typical paracord bracelet, you need to use a specific length of paracord for your size wrist. One of the advantages to my design, my quick 1-minute construction design, is that you can use a variable amount of paracord. This, for instance, would be on the long side. This I made with 9 feet of paracord. And this is the thicker 750 variety paracord, although I have made them with as much as 10 feet of paracord. The problem is, as you compress the coils more and more and more and more, because you want to squish on as much as possible, you get this problem, what I call lumpy exterior. Coils, they want to kind of bounce over each other because you're compressing them so tightly they just won't fit. So having too much can be a problem, but in theory you can make 10 feet, 9 feet's quite a bit more comfortable. 8 feet is even better still. And then if you want to really skimp on how much you're using, what you can do is make a very tight outer coil. This I made with about 6.5 to 7 feet of paracord. This is commercial grade 550. If you want to go even farther, because you're running low on paracord, you can skimp on the area of coiling. This has a much extended area, a greater extended area under the stopper knot, so I used much less cord, only 4 feet of cord. That may seem like very little, but that's because I used a very large flat area under the head. Take that to extremes and you can make this. This is a 1-foot paracord quick release bracelet. It's exactly the same, everything connects the same, you construct it the same, but the coiled area is obviously much, much smaller. So you can make my design with any amount of cordage you want almost. 10 feet, 9 feet, 8 feet seems to be about ideal for my size wrist. 6.5 to 7 feet, 4 feet, or 1 foot. Here's a construction trick that I don't talk about in the main how-to videos. Some of you may have cleverly noticed, how is that guy able to coil these and he has exactly the right amount of cordage right at the end when he finishes it off? Well, although it's true this was a bracelet that I had already made previously when I construct these. However, I'm also controlling how much extra slack I have here. If I need more room, more coil area, I compress the bracelet. That gives me more area to coil it on. But then when you come to the very end here, for instance, as I mentioned, right after you have rounded the inner run with the stopper knot, that's when you then put in the tail and you compress against it. But see how this is now, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 millimeters longer than it should be. I like it to stick out a little bit, but not that much. Yet in my videos, you never see me cutting anything, and that's because I'm controlling that. How do I control that? Well, here's how you do it. If you need it to be longer, what you do is you compress you more tightly wrap the last few coils. So if I more tightly construct this by pushing in slightly, see how this is now a thinner diameter than over here? This now magically extends my last little bit to be longer so it reaches farther. Conversely, if I want it to be shorter in length, what I do is I wrap the last few coils a little more loosely. So that's sort of a trick method that allows you to make these bracelets out of almost any length of cord you want. You control how much compression, so how much of the area is coiled, and you control how long is this last little bit. There's a tendency when making these to put on too much cordage. You get 2 problems. The connection hole tends to constrict and get too small to put these on easily, and you get these bumps all along the length. You can roll them away temporarily, but they rematerialize. Number one mistake making these is putting on too much cordage. This is a nice bracelet with a nice smooth exterior, and here's one where I put on too much cordage. What happens is the cords, they hemorrhage out from each other because they just can't fit. So what you need to do is to cut some off. even if you roll it clean, it'll just re-happen again each time you make the bracelet, so you want to avoid that. As a temporary fix, I've attempted to roll this one to clean it up, but there's another problem with an overly compacted bracelet. When you expand the size of the hole in order to make it large enough to fit over the knot when you're putting the bracelet on, what happens is you extend it to the correct size, but then watch what happens to this when I curl the bracelet to put it on. See it constrict, and that then makes it hard to get that knot through the hole. So that's another problem with an overly compacted, overly compressed bracelet. So don't put on too much cordage. So here are the 4 different paracords I have on hand: 750 paracord, 550 paracord, 325, and 95. Those all designate the number of pounds they can hold static load. 750, 550, 325, 95. A normal paracord, which is made of nylon, when you put it in water, it acts sort of like a sponge, and eventually it'll just sink down to the bottom. But this material, Dyneema, float. Disadvantages are that you can't open it up to get more cordage. It's just one design. It's not very knot friendly. What I mean by that is only certain knots will work in it. You have a limitation on what you can use. But the fact that it floats is certainly going to be useful for people who are more boatmen than I am. I like that my bracelet design is 100% paracord. You don't have to go out and buy a plastic buckle. It's 100% paracord, even the fastening mechanism, the quick release fastening mechanism. But instead of this ball knot design for holding it onto your wrist, if you wanted to, you could convert that to more like a button design. I looked through my junk drawer looking for a fender washer. Where is it? Yeah, here. That's an example of one that's going to be way too big. But instead of the button, you could use a fender washer to make it more like a button. Since I couldn't find one, I made one. Here I made one out of a penny. All I did was take a penny and I drilled a hole so I could stick the paracord through, melt the top, and squash it so it's sort of a crowned mushroom top. And this acts more like sort of a button design. Maybe a little easier to take these on and off. So that would be one option, is to add a button. You can also store thin, flat things over the top of your wrist. It has to be kind of short in length. This bracelet, for instance, internally has a paper clip. So if you want to, you could store extra things inside your bracelet, like a paper clip or a ferrocerium rod for starting fires. You can scrape that against some metal, maybe one of my razor knives, my Mac 1 razor knife or my Mac 2 razor knife, or just a key. You could store a little fishing kit. You could put a little kit inside a flattened straw that you sealed the tips with, melt them with a lighter. I put a fishing kit into one of my parafobs once, but it would also work into a bracelet design as well. There it falls out. And this particular one is a emergency fishing kit. Not sure if you can see that on camera. The ferrocerium rod also can be stored within the flat area underneath the head. So if you have a short ferrocerium rod, you can gut the paracord and stick it inside the gutted paracord at the end. I'm wearing my new Mega bracelet. I was having trouble sawing this ferrocerium rod because the powder that was coming off was forming a little puddle underneath, and then the sparks would ignite the puddle, forming a fire. So I'm trying this method, which is to scrape, rather than having the fragments fall in a little pile that then bursts into flame, causing a fire, especially on this cardboard. Instead, I'm stroking it along the blade. Victorinox Quattro. I hope this is going to be in focus. This gives you 4 different screwdriver tips, but let's see how this would work as a button. This 550 paracord just barely makes it through that hole. Now instead of a big Ashley stopper knot, I'm just going to tie a quick overhand knot just for testing purposes. So will that work as a button? Let's see. I'm not sure if this is going to be easier to put on or harder to put on. I think it's going to be harder to put on. So it was worth experimenting with to see what it's like, but overall I'm going to give it a fail, this Victorinox one. My favorite color, black, doesn't get dirty very easily, at least it doesn't show it, but the lighter color paracords can show dirt pretty quickly after you've been wearing them for a few weeks. You can clean these easily though. You just dispense it into paracord, which you're not reluctant to do since they're easy to remake. Add some hot water and some liquid soap. Shake it up in the jar. This is a peanut butter jar I got from my recycling bin. Rinse out the soap. Squeeze out the excess water, and then hang this on a nail by an open window, and within a couple of hours you've got clean, dry paracord ready to remake into a bracelet in about a minute. To dry it quickly, you can swirl it around like a centrifuge. Listen to this sound. I suppose instead of taking 2 hours to dry, you could do it in 5 minutes, but you're wasting a lot of calories, so not the kind of thing you want to do in a survival situation, but still kind of an interesting trick. So sometimes for reasons outside of your control, it becomes difficult to take these off. You can sort of poke it through if you really wanted to, but if you like that quick release and it's giving you trouble, brace it against the desk, pull the hole open a little bit, and then you should have no problem. I talk in my original video about how in addition to being a bracelet, you can also use this for other functions. For instance, you could use it as a carry handle. Maybe you want a more comfortable grip for a backpack, for instance. You can make this into a nice carry handle. This is a lot easier to carry on your fingers than just a thin cord. Is take any device such as this Maxpedition FR1, anything that has 2 D-rings, for instance, or this has these convenient loops here. Now slide this part inside. And now you've got a nice little carry handle. It's convenient that your wrist size is also apparently your grip size. However, if you want it more secure, what you can do is if you pull this side, it then constricts the cord on the other side, and you can constrict it all the way to the point where it's impossible for that ball knot to escape. So that makes it a very secure setting. Of course, if you do this while you're wearing it as a bracelet, you're in big trouble. But there's a secret release mechanism. This Ashley stopper knot becomes compromised if you undo just one thing. If you undo this last bit when you're making it, this last part, the tail, it then becomes open. So that's sort of a secret release. The same design can be made in different lengths. You could make, for instance, maybe a belt or a bag strap, a dog leash, almost anything you want. They also turn instantly into lanyards, for instance. Might be a little long, a wrist design lanyard, but here's how you would make it. Here's just a cheap Chinese knife, nothing special. Picked it up at a flea market, but it's got this lanyard hole here. What you do is take off the bracelet, extend the length of the hole as much as you can, stick it through the lanyard hole by squishing it flat, and now stick the rest of the balance through that hole. You've made what's called a girth hitch or a cow hitch. Now you have instant lanyard. like my stylish new ring? No, I'm just kidding. It's actually a bracelet. What? Well, maybe a bracelet for an incredibly small person. But it's really just to show that you can make these any size you want. This is made of the big 750 paracord. It's made with about 3 feet in length, 3 feet of paracord. But the real purpose for it is that this is going to be used as a lanyard or a parafob for my keychain. So I have just a little short 3-foot length of cord on my keychain. You could also put that as a lanyard on a knife or on a Leatherman tool, I suppose. And it deploys just like the bracelet. You pull it, put your finger in the top. So short you don't really need to do this part. You zip it out and bingo, you've got your expansive paracord.